Hello and welcome back. Eddie Radosovich, George Stoya here from the SoonerScoop.com studios. Welcome back to the SoonerScoop.com YouTube page. Time for a little bit of a practice report. It's time to check in on the Sooners as they have opened up spring practice. A little bit, as we've discussed here on the program, a little bit of a weird schedule. They practiced this week, and now they're going to break for spring break coming up next week, only to be back out onto the practice field. Must be nice. A little spring break. That'd be awesome.
I'm taking a good spring break. I'm going to Las Vegas next week.
I was wondering if he was going to disclose where he's headed. I'm very
party.
jealous. Yeah, that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
On March Madness,
Madness.
Thursday,
It's going to lose a lot of money, but it's going to be fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun. So Oklahoma has open practice. We got some stuff to talk about here, though. We don't have access to within the program this week, just in terms of official media availability with the players. But we can talk about some stuff that Brent talked about last week, and in terms of the special team stuff, which I think is super interesting with the addition of Doug Deacon as an analyst to the program. You were at the Board of Regents meeting that we'll get into as well. But let's start with the roster. I mean, they actually put out a spring roster for Oklahoma. I know that you kind of dove into a bunch of the numbers, George, just in terms of guys that had maybe made some gains here over the course of the winter, and just seeing some of them out at Pro Day, it seems like it was another really good winter with Jerry Schmidt.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the roster, and I don't think it's fully updated, and obviously these guys' weights, they're going to change throughout the spring and the summer and all of that, but I do think it gives you kind of an indication of some guys that have really been working hard in the weight room, also some guys that maybe they want to get their weight up, or maybe they want to get their weight down. I tweeted this out, but some of the guys that had the biggest movement, Nick Anderson up 6 pounds to 213.
Which you can definitely tell seeing him on Tuesday over at Pro Day.
I bet he's even more than 213. I bet he's closer to 215 by now. I mean, he definitely looks physically great. And he did last year too, but you can tell, now going into his third year in the program, it's really helped him out. Kip Lewis up 8 pounds to 214. I know he's someone that they want to get close to around 220. Danny Stutzman up 5 pounds to 241, which makes you think he's definitely going to play that Mike linebacker position. Trace Ford's up 6 pounds to 258. R. Mason Thomas is up 7 pounds, which he's up to 246. He was at around 220 a year ago, so he's really put on a lot of weight over the last year. Troy Everett up 11 pounds to 305, so he's over 300.
Big move.
Oh yeah, and it's a good one for him because he's a guy that was really undersized last year, and he's always going to be kind of a smaller guy. But if he's going to be your starting center, you definitely want him around where he's at, 305. Logan Howland, who I know the coaching staff is huge on right now, up 22 pounds to 306. I don't expect him to start necessarily, but he's definitely a guy you look up. He could be a backup next year at left tackle.
It definitely seems with Logan Howland specifically, like I wouldn't say anybody's like made a move in the spring. I mean, my gosh, they've had 2 practices basically.
Yeah.
But it does seem like just in terms of coming out of winter and then going into the spring, there's a lot of people that seem to be super excited about him. And I know that it was always going to kind of be a question of, okay, how quickly can he accelerate himself to get acclimated to moving, not just to the tackle position in general, remembering that he played tight end in high school, but, adding the weight, everything like that. It seems like he's checked a lot of boxes. Now it's about producing onto the field.
And if you remember correctly, I think it was last year during the season, there's always a couple guys that would stay after practice and work.
100%.
And it was always Walter Rouse and Logan Howland. Yeah. And you could tell Logan was learning a lot from Rouse in terms of how to set his feet, footwork, those type of things. And to see him put on this weight now, to be up to 306, I'm sure they want to add another 10 pounds to that, I think is a huge jump for him. And we'll see. This is a big spring for him as well as other guys. I know Heath Ozeta, they're really high on him. I mean, I think he's kind of competing for maybe a starting role. So we'll see on that offensive line. And then one other guy I was going to mention, Taylor Wine, up 9 pounds to 257. I know he was a guy that they really liked last year. He redshirted, but he's somebody that I think that they think could maybe end up contributing on that defensive end, defensive line room.
There was so much talk about PJ Adebawore when he comes into the program that, and not to compare, I mean, rightfully so, PJ and, everything that he did in high school and the stars that he comes along with, he should have been talked about. Like, he got onto the field as a freshman. But it does seem like somebody like a Taylor Wine kind of slid in under the radar. And, I know that Josh has talked about it going all the way back to the 2024 signing day, just in terms of you don't really know what you have there because he had his recruitment obviously accelerated in the final months as a senior coming off of his senior football season. But at the same time, it is kind of exciting knowing that you have somebody like that within the program that might be a little bit of a, under the radar type guy.
He's somebody that, again, I don't know how much he will contribute this year, but again, he's putting on the weight. He's got the right body type. He's kind of a raw talent, so you wonder, can he find a way onto the field? I was also going to read off some of these the true freshmen that I know people are really excited about.
I mean,
Jaden
you got to remember
Jackson.
that 22 of them are already on campus.
Exactly, and a lot of these guys they're going to have to lean on to maybe contribute. Jaden Jackson up to 295. I bet he gets to 300 by the season. Danny Okoye 255, which is just a monster number for a guy like him. David Stone 283. Wyatt Gilmore 253. Xavier Robinson up to 228 playing running back. Michael Boganowski 212. Josh Iasosa 322. And Eugene Brooks. This number is just shocking for an 18-year-old. 334 pounds.
He's a man.
I mean, he's massive. So, and he's a guy that, again, we mentioned Heath Azeda. I think Eugene Brooks, of all the true freshman offensive linemen, I think he's a guy to watch and see if maybe he can compete for one of those starting jobs. So, again, the roster's out there. You can go check it out for yourself. But just some of those numbers I think are always intriguing to look at.
Well, we got about 90 more guys to go. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I could.
No,
I could read them all
it
off.
does seem like it was a positive moving forward into what is going to be a really big spring for a bunch of those guys on the offensive and defensive line. It's also going to be a massive, massive spring for Oklahoma special teams. And I think that was something that we probably talked about ad nauseum, especially at the end of the year when Zach Schmidt started to miss a lot of field goals in certainly games, in close games. That's like, okay, that really could have cost you in Provo. But at the same time, they go out. Jay Nunez, obviously moving on to Alabama as a special teams coach.
Yep.
Oklahoma's hired an analyst in Doug Deacon from San Diego State that, I think for the most part has been notoriously known for a really stellar special teams unit.
Yeah, San Diego State, I know that they're playing group of five ball, but, they've had, one of the top, I think, 25 special teams units the last few years in a lot of different categories. And so he's a guy that's coached this, for, I think, 18 years at San Diego State. He's done a really good job. His contract was released the other day in the Board of Regents. We'll get to all those numbers later, but he's getting paid $180,000 here at Oklahoma on a 1-year contract, and he takes over a room that, I think they've got a lot of ability at returner. There's no question about that. You talk about Deion Burks, obviously Gavin Freeman didn't do as well at the end of the season last year, but he still has some potential there. You can see the explosiveness. Jalil Farouk, there's options there. Peyton Bowen, I think, could compete for a job back there. Kickers where you're really interested. And you bring in a guy in Tyler Keltner from Florida State as well as Eastern Kentucky. And then Liam Evans, the true freshman, who I think a lot of people are high on from Moore. I know he's got a monster leg. And look, Zach Schmidt, a lot of people don't want to hear this. Zach Schmidt is an above average college kicker. You need him to be great, and I do think he has a great leg. I mean, he's really good in kickoffs.
The accuracy thing is a problem.
It's the accuracy and being in those clutch moments and close games, which I think OU's going to be in a lot of next year. You need somebody to step up and make those kicks, and so it's going to be interesting to follow. That's a competition that honestly could go well into fall camp. I wouldn't even be shocked if they're kind of testing it out during the season a little bit.
Yeah, it's something that it's never, special teams are never a problem until they are. And when they become a problem, that's when you start losing games because of a product of poor special teams, whether it be missed kicks or, the Texas game. I thought that thing really turned on the penalty that, brought the ball back, I think, inside the 10-yard line.
Yeah.
It's just little things, and everything gets magnified when you get into these games, like you said, George, that should be tight games in the fourth quarter. So
everything matters, and I think that Brent has said that a lot, and there's a reason they brought in the guys that they did. I mean, we should also note Gavin Marshall no longer on the roster. He's in the transfer portal. He was the backup kicker last year, but was injured, and that was a big reason why we saw Schmidt the rest of the year.
So it's going to be kind of a 3-person race for the kicking duties, certainly going into the spring. And, we'll see what the punter situation is going to be. I think it was kind of lost on a lot of people just how good they were at the end of the season.
Luke Alzinga was, I think they were sitting around 90th in net punt in the UCF game, which is when Luke Alzinga came in. They end up finishing in the top 50. So Luke Alzinga was really good.
Would he end up averaging 45?
Something like that. I mean, he was really good.
Here is Brent Venables talking about the new addition to the program in Doug Deacon.
Yeah. So loved, again, Doug's body of work. He's been committed. He's built something where he's at in lots of different ways. He's kind of earned his way in this profession. So he's got a great journey and a great testimony on how he got to where he is. But he's really good. He's passionate about what he does. He's smart, very, again, successful, putting his guys in both scheme and the fundamentals of the game in position to win. He's got a philosophy on special teams from an aggressiveness standpoint that aligns with what we want to be as well in the special teams area. And again, we feel like this will be an opportunity to improve and get better. That's obviously a space that we got to improve. We got to kick the ball with more consistency and can't turn the ball over. And we got to be more efficient in every part of that. I think the one area that we are pretty good, top 5 in the country, was kickoff. But every other part of our special teams will substantially improve if we make a few more kicks and we don't fumble the ball.
Seems pretty simple. It's going to be a very, very important unit to improve. And I think that, like, when you look at the offensive line, and if you want to just lump in the defensive line together, maybe number 2 for me going into the spring and coming out of spring is you have to know that you got better at that at just special teams in general, but specifically place kicker, where you can get somebody out there that is dependable.
And I don't think we're not asking one of these guys to come in and just be nails from 50
They
plus.
don't have to have somebody that wins the Lou Groza next year, but they need somebody that at least is maybe on a semifinal list if you're winning football games.
It's things like, you're up 7 with, 5 minutes to go and you need to kick a 44-yarder.
That's right.
You got to make that.
Yeah.
That changes a game, right? That could win you the game. It put things away. Or, right before halftime, you line up for a 48-yarder and you're able to make those kicks, or you feel good about your chances on it. I mean, last year it got to a point where it was like you didn't feel good anytime they kicked a field goal. And so that's what you're not asking for a guy to come in and just make 50-plus yarders. That'd be great if they could do that, but I think that they need to worry from that 30 to 49 range and just be nails from there.
Well, just think about it this way, too. I think that maybe if you have a better place kicker, and, who knows how it would have affected everything because of the weather up in Lawrence, but maybe that final drive in Lawrence where you're trying to run the football inexplicably, I think there's people still a little upset about that, but maybe you try to just kick a field goal. You kick a field goal, the game's over.
Yeah, I mean, and in Bedlam too, I think that they didn't trust Schmidt as much. I think he made one in that game, but
they had to go for it on the plus side of the field though, because you just don't trust anybody.
Exactly. So I think that's the biggest thing for special teams, because I do think, like I said earlier, they've got dudes to be able to return the ball, and the fumbling thing, I think that they're going to figure it out at punt return. They've got too many talented guys. I think kick return, Jalil Farouk was pretty good at times. You looked at the couple fumbles, and then obviously the situation where they had, was it Marcus Stripling trying to catch the punt,
I believe
return,
so,
something like that.
Yeah.
That was
having a defensive end.
What are you
back
doing there? Yeah. So I just think small things like that it's easily fixable.
While kicking into a 45
a monsoon.
Wind
Yeah, I mean, it's
in a monsoon.
Yeah.
Which neither here nor there. It should be really interesting. Just in terms of, this is a little bit off the radar. I know that they've only practiced a couple times to start the spring. Give me one name you're really, really excited about that maybe everybody outside of the OU bubble maybe wouldn't know.
I mean,
I'm just springing this upon you.
This is not a exciting name, but a name that continues to come up, and especially for a unit that every position seems up for grabs, is Heath Ozeda. Yeah. I would watch for Heath Ozeda. I think that he could make a push for one of those guard spots. I think he's had a really good offseason. I think they were really impressed with him last year, and I just think he's a guy that can improve. In terms of maybe a skill position guy maybe we aren't talking enough about, I think Jaden Gibson's going to play a big role in this offense, and I know people are excited about him, so I don't know if that counts for outside of the bubble, but I would not be shocked if he is a larger part of the offense in a big way next year.
There's just so many guys at the wide receiver position. It was something that we talked to Deion Burks about at the media day thing that they had for the newcomers, that they have so many different bodies that it's going to be kind of fun to see what that rotation looks like. They can go big, they can go small, they can kind of go somewhere in between, if you will. And then how do the burners like a Brennan Thompson or Gavin Freeman, how do all these guys fit into what a offense that's going to look somewhat different under Seth Luttrell. So
one guy on defense I'll mention too that I think we're not talking enough about, Robert Spears-Jennings. I think everybody's already penciled in Peyton Bowen to start next to Billy Bowman, and I think Peyton Bowen's going to play a lot, and he could end up starting there next to Billy Bowman. But I think they really like Robert Spears-Jennings, and he showed some flashes last year toward the end of the year that I think could give them a lot, especially when you talk about Billy Bowman's kind of a ball hawk type of guy, can do a lot of different things in coverage. Robert Spears-Jennings is super physical, a guy that can come up, play the run, and do a lot of different things that maybe a younger guy like Peyton Bowen is maybe just. I mean, not to say he's not physically ready, but I do think he's a little bit different type of player that maybe plays well alongside a guy like Billy Bowman.
Should be fun. I'm excited to get out there at some point here in the matter of it would be
just
about
to see the guys.
Just about over a week and a half, I think, when they come back to practice. So spring break coming up next week. Obviously, everybody's going to be headed out of town. I would imagine do people still do that? People still take like not high school trips, but like senior trips.
Oh yeah,
stuff
I
like
think
that
so.
In college.
That's what I've heard.
I wonder where that's at these days.
I don't know. Maybe we should Cancun, Cabo.
Cancun. You might run into the cartel in Cancun. I'm not sure what that situation is.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I don't know.
You want
any thoughts on the border
I'd
crisis?
love to go to Cabo. I don't know. Somewhat. Maybe we'll do a different YouTube show. I know that
I'm sure Aaron Rodgers has got some thoughts.
We'll probably have him on and talk about that and some other things that he's been in the news for over the last 24 hours. As far as Pro Day, that wrapped up on Tuesday. It was good to get out there just in terms of, it was probably the lightest Pro Day that I can remember at Oklahoma, obviously because of, it is what it is. Tyler Guyton kind of led the way. But I think for me, just getting our eyes on, there's Jackson Arnold and Jalil Farouk, Grayson Halton behind him. It was good to see some of these guys. Andrell Anthony, as well as Justin Harrington standing there. I think that you pointed out to me, neither of them had a brace on their knee, which is obviously a positive. But there he is. Zach Alley. Can't confirm it. He's a real person. Pretty tall guy.
He's tall.
Standing there with Rufus Alexander and talking to Brandon Hall in the background, Emmett Jones. So it was good to actually get eyeballs on him, to see him. In terms of the actual participants within the Pro Day, though, how did you think everything went?
I mean, look, there wasn't the most stellar group, and I would say of the group, Tyler Guyton didn't really go through any of the actual drills other than the positional drills for the offensive line, but he's obviously going to get drafted. Walter Rouse is going to get drafted. Andrew Rame was there but didn't go through anything. I expect him to get drafted. Other than that, not a lot of guys that I think are going to get drafted. Drake Stoops obviously was the big name out there. I don't think he's going to get drafted. Didn't test extremely well, which was expected. None of us thought he was going to go out there and run a 4.40. If you did, you were lying to yourself. But I thought he did really good in the route running phase. I know we have some clips of that, but I think he kind of showed what he can do when he gets out onto the field. And look, if a team's going to take a chance on Drake, whether it's in the draft or free agency, it's because of his tape and also the type of dude he is, the way he works, those sorts of things. It's not because of how much he gets on the bench press or how fast his 40 is.
The good news for Drake Stoops is he has a bunch of tape from college. Yeah. And I think that, whoever it will be and, whatever team we were talking before we started recording today, that I think that whoever gives him an opportunity will see what he did in college over the last 4 or 5 years in Norman and be like, okay, we want you to come in and you're going to do this role for us. And I do think somebody's going to give him an opportunity, whether it be a mini camp or coming in as a rookie, undrafted, to try and make the team. And I think that, he said it afterwards when he talked to the media, basically in the position that he's in right now, that's all you can do if you want to go have that opportunity to go play at the next level. And it will be fun. I think that there will be somebody out there, though, that gives him some type of opportunity.
And his way to making a team or making a roster or practice squad is through special teams. Sure. And I'm not talking about just punt return. I mean, that would certainly help him to show that he could do something like that. But it's being a gunner. It's doing different things on kickoff or kickoff return, whatever it may be. That's where he's going to be able to make a roster. Because, look, if you think he's going to go out there and start for a team at slot receiver next year, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so he's got to have to work his way through special teams. And so that's what's going to be interesting. We'll see. I think he'll perform really well at training camp and all that. And I would expect him to be on a practice squad at least next year. So we'll see. It's going to be really interesting to see where he ends up signing, because he's probably going to get to be able to pick where he wants to go in terms of what team he wants to sign with, undrafted. So I think that's going to be a huge decision for him, because he needs to go somewhere that is going to look at him and give him an actual chance, and also go somewhere that I think is offensively kind of explosive and can kind of work towards some of his abilities.
As far as Tyler Guyton, he's going to be the first Oklahoma player off the board in the draft in April.
Yep.
Just seeing him go through workouts, stuff like that, I thought he had a good day. I don't really even know what that means in terms of I don't think that he improved his stock, or certainly didn't hurt his stock. Where have you seen his name at in some of these mock drafts? Could he bump into the top 10? Could he bump into the top 15?
He's definitely top 20, in my opinion. I think he's definitely going to be there. We'll see. I think he had a really good combine. He looked good in his individual drills the other day at Pro Day, as well as at the combine a few weeks ago. So it kind of depends on if a team falls in love with him, and that can happen in the NFL, especially with the draft. A team could easily fall in love with Tyler Guyton over some of these other tackles, and he could go in the top 10. I don't know how many teams right now are looking for a tackle in the top 10. That's part of the why I think he's kind of in that 15 to 20 range. But like I said, if one of those teams, those one or two teams that do want to tackle in the top 10, fall in love with him, they could easily take him. And I think he's a guy that you can pencil in as a starter next year for a team. And he's kind of like Anton Harrison, who went ahead and started for the Jaguars this last year. Tyler Guyton can do that, and he can play either right or left tackle. So you feel really good about him. Going. He's definitely going in the first round, and I would say definitely in the top 20. So he's performed really well, and again, he's a guy that has just the last year or two has developed extremely well.
I thought he almost kind of looking back at this, and I don't know if it struck me on Tuesday, he kind of almost looks like he's leaned up a little bit.
He
since
does.
The last time that we saw him. Maybe it's especially in the face. It looks like.
Yeah, he's just built like an offensive tackle, a guy that can
and
do
to
a lot
move
of
the way
things.
that he does at that those measurements. It's
insane.
He's going to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Over the next hopefully decade plus. Playing tackle.
Well, and it's it's a testament again. I think Bill Beatenbow has done a great job developing him. Again, he's a guy like Logan Howland. He started his career at tight end.
Sure.
At TCU, made the move to tackle, and then obviously transferred to Oklahoma. And I think Bill's done a really good job. I think Walter Rouse has also improved his stock in his 1 year at Oklahoma. He's another guy. I expect him to go probably no earlier than the 5th round, but I do think he'll get drafted. And then Andrew Rame, didn't have a great combine. But again, another guy that I don't think anybody expected to do well in that kind of testing, but I do think a team will take a chance on somebody that was a 3-year starter at center at a place like Oklahoma.
No doubt. Somebody's going to give them opportunities. It's going to be kind of fun to see where these guys end up. Lastly, it was a busy Tuesday down here in Norman. You went over to the Board of Regents meeting. What is it, like the quarterly meeting that they always
they
do?
have one, I don't know, like every 3 months, I think, something like that.
Okay.
The next one's in June.
Okay.
They're pretty boring.
You said that you're excited for the next one for some reason.
No, I think I might be out of town for the next one in June. But
interesting, Kerry. We need to check this guy's vacation schedule.
Which I do think maybe Brent will have an update on his contract at that one, because there wasn't one on this one. And usually they do the coaches' contracts in March or June. This year, Brent wanted to do them in January, get those out of the way. But we got to know Zach Alley's contract officially, $850,000 for him, 3-year contract. So getting paid about $900,000 a year.
About what we thought it was going to be going into. And what does that tell you here moving forward about Zach Alley's? Because we've really not gotten the in-depth, like, this is what he's being brought in to do. Is he going to call plays? What was your read on that?
Well, he's the highest paid defensive assistant now on staff, which tells me I don't know if he's going to call plays necessarily, but he's going to have a major role in what they're doing defensively. And Brent's open about that. He's talked about it, last week, saying that he's somebody that he trusts. Obviously, I think he's somebody that can scheme up things, game plan, those sorts of things. So I don't know necessarily if he's going to be the guy saying, hey, this is what we're running on third down on game day, but I do think he'll have a lot of input to what they're doing. Otherwise, they wouldn't be paying him this amount of money. And it's a huge bump for him. He's getting paid $213,000 as the Jacksonville State defensive coordinator. So what is that in my head? $600,000 bump, pretty much, to come to Oklahoma. That's a pretty good payday for
sounds like a
30-year-old.
Tuesday night with Darryl Strawberry.
Yeah,
$600,000 bump.
There you go. But also Todd Bates. got another raise. He's up to $800,000. And Bill Beatenbow up to $1 million, $1.05 million. So he's the lone positional assistant that is getting paid over $1 million. Both those guys, I think, had opportunities to go elsewhere this offseason. I know that teams were interested in them, especially around the SEC. Both obviously opted to stay at Oklahoma and got additional raises from the ones they got in January. That brings Oklahoma's total for the staff salary $7.839 million, which would rank 7th in the SEC, which I know a lot of people are, 7th, that's not. They're only $1 million behind Alabama, who's number 1 at $9 million. So
there's not a whole lot.
There's not a huge gap there. So it's nothing. And again, Oklahoma's never going to be the place that pays their assistants the most in college football.
Finishing 15th place on the Live Tour, you're probably making about $8 million. All right, that's very good. And, I think that it was good to just kind of get those numbers out there, especially for the Zach Alley stuff, because maybe and I don't know, maybe we're reading too much into it, but you get a better idea of kind of what he's going to
have an integral part of this. And we've said that. I reported that when they first hired him, that this was a move that, Brent wanted to bring someone in that he could trust to kind of run things. And that's, again, not to say that Brent's not going to be involved. He definitely is. But Zach Alley is somebody they certainly trust to kind of, help shape the defense.
Anything else from the Board of Regents meeting? I know that they approved the statue for Patty Gasso.
Yep.
And it sounds like it's already completed.
That, from my understanding, it's completed, and they're going to do some sort of presentation in April.
Okay. That was something that I was wondering, too. Like, Patty just seems like somebody would be like, don't put it up until I'm done coaching. But
I think that they're pushing to do it this season.
Okay.
I know that that's what kind of Joe C. indicated to me out there at Love's Field, and so I think they're going to do it in April. It's also not going to be like the Heisman statues. It's not going to be that big. It's life size, but it's not as big as obviously some of those ones on Heisman Row. And it's also going to be right outside of Gate 1, right where you walk in.
If you remember back to some of the stuff at the dedication, like kind of in that area, is that what you're talking about?
And it's the same people that did Bob Stoops' statue, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield. It's the same, I think, company that did those sculptures.
What's the going rate these days to get one of those done?
I honestly don't know. I could find out.
I think because it's paid for privately, correct?
Correct. Yes, it's totally through donations, from my understanding.
I just always kind of wondered, like, how much the Heisman statues even make.
Maybe we should get one at Sooner Scoop offices. Put you out front on Campus Corner.
It would be defaced.
I don't know. I think people would celebrate it.
Yeah, well, there would be people that would celebrate it, and I appreciate all those people. But there would also be people that come by and desecrate it, and that wouldn't.
In a few years, it'd have to be like a Joe Pa statue. We'd have to get it removed.
I don't know if we need it out there. My name and Joe Pa's name being put into any type of algorithm.
Yeah, that was a bad joke.
That was a bad joke,
but it's funny
to some.
Yeah.
Sandusky. Interesting. All right, very good, George. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
I think we'll probably check back in
next
do something
week
for
during
spring break.
Yeah, maybe some positional breakdowns or something.
Yeah,
we still have so many interviews that I'm sure we could go through and find something to talk about.
I'm just ready for this to kind of get back going when we get back.
I want to go out to practice. I know we don't get to see a ton. It's a lot of stretching and individual drills, but you can at least kind of look at guys and be like, okay, that guy looks different,
If for nothing else, I want to be able to just kind of get a better impression or a better idea of how they're going to use the Samuel Omosigos of the world, the Lewis Carters. I think those are kind of guys that not necessarily have been forgotten about by any means, but I do think that this is a big spring for them to kind of take that next jump if they want to, contribute and be part of a defense that obviously is bringing back a ton of guys from last year.
And it's practice is always good too to see who's kind of leading drills, who's being vocal. You can always hear guys yelling and those sorts of things. It kind of gives you a picture of, hey, who's going to be the leaders. Like I know last year, just watching Dylan Gabriel in practice, he looked different than maybe he did a year ago in terms of the way he was leading drills, the way he was talking. I mean, what does Jackson Arnold look like talking? What does Casey Thompson look like out there in practice talking to those quarterbacks? So all that stuff matters. And again, it's small things, but it's stuff for us to do and also kind of analyze.
No doubt about it. It should be a lot of fun here when everything gets going. It's a good time to join SoonerScoop.com for $1. That's it. $1. You get a month of all the content. And right now it is probably about as busy. I think Tuesday was maybe the busiest we had been in quite some time. $1 for the spring ball special, SoonerScoop.com. Spring football coverage continues. We'll find out the destination for Oklahoma's men's basketball team in the NCAA tournament. It's still expected after the Big 12 tournament loss to TCU. See where they end up, as well as the Oklahoma women on Sunday night. See what location they're headed to into the NCAA tournament after they were dismissed from Kansas City. So
lots of recruiting going on too.
A lot of visits coming up. I know that, and make sure that
spring tour coming up.
You got the spring tour coming up. Make sure that you guys check out, Josh McQuestion and I were down in Dallas over the weekend, the Under Armour event, Oklahoma 2025 wide receiver commit. Elijah Thomas ends up taking home the wide receiver MVP award. I thought he was exceptional. We should also note
Jaden Nickens.
Oklahoma did lose a commitment in the 2025 class. Jaden Nickens, played football at Millwood, transferred over to Douglas, won a state championship with Douglas just this past weekend. He announced he had decommitted from Oklahoma. Some more information on that, I guess is how we should say it. Josh had posted on the Crimson Corner, and you can get that for $1. So that's a pretty easy impression there. Baseball, softball headed out to Texas Tech. Iowa State doesn't have a softball program.
They do have a softball program.
Do they?
Oh, you just swept them this last weekend in Norman. Iowa State did. You did.
The baseball team's headed to TCU. I think when you compared me to Joe Paterno, you really got in my brain. You really got in my brain, and it says everything about you where your mind was at.
Yeah,
that you thought about Joe Paterno.
I get a lot of shit on here.
Who's a scumbag? But you said that you always kind of liked him, and the '80s you thought were fine. For George Stoya, I'm Eddie Radosevich. We'll see you right back here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube page next time.